Good afternoon. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Jonathan Fahey, former ICE director, will be with us. That's 4:30. Then 5 o'clock, Hung Cao, who's got a great name, as President Trump said today. He's running for Senate in Virginia. He'll be with us at 5 o'clock. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Do you know what Democrats will do if they get a little bit more power? Oh, boy, I shudder to think of it. There's a couple of things that they really want to do. One of them is pack the United States Supreme Court. They've really not made that a secret at all. That's the game plan. And if they do that, forget the Constitution. You may as well light that document on fire. Go down to the archives and light it on fire. AOC will probably handle that for you. That's the plan. Pack the United States Supreme Court. The other piece here is Chuck Schumer wants to get rid of the filibuster in order to ram through their agenda. So whereas the Senate is supposed to slow down the legislative process in order to make it so that Congress makes wise and prudent decisions, deliberative decisions, Chuck Schumer would like for it to be just as emotionally incontinent as everything else the Democrats control. That's the plan. And today in the New York Post, this past week in the New York Post, there's a column written by Rich Lowry saying Chuck Schumer potentially eliminating the filibuster is the key to a radical agenda. He writes that Chuck Schumer is doing us a favor. Often parties try to obscure or deny their radical plans prior to an election, but the Senate Majority Leader is being more candid. In a session with reporters at the Democrat National Convention, Schumer suggested that should Democrats win the White House, Senate, and House in November, he would seek to end the filibuster for purposes of passing, quote, voting rights and abortion legislation. That would be an inflection point in American government. There's no nuking the legislative filibuster a little bit. The end run around the Senate's longstanding requirement for 60 votes to pass non-fiscal legislation might begin with, again, so-called voting rights and abortion, but it surely wouldn't end there. Rich writes, if a nationwide imposition of abortion on demand can pass with 51 votes, why can't Medicare for all or the Green New Deal? Schumer already says he wants another massive climate bill and waves away criticism about the national debt. So if you would like more chaos, if you'd like the Senate to ram through more life-altering legislation, constitution-trampling legislation, then Chuck Schumer's got a plan for you, which is get rid of the filibuster. That's the game plan. And they're saying it out loud. They're not hiding their intentions here. That's the goal, which is yet another reason why they should not have this power. They should not have this power at all. Let's talk about some of the craziness that's going on today. I mentioned with Corey Lewandowski that the Harris campaign, Kamala Harris's campaign, is trying to waltz away from their debate obligations here. You're supposed to debate on ABC on September 10th, and they were supposed to exist under the rules that Biden had negotiated in the first place, because that's what the Harris campaign demanded. Oh, we're not doing extra debates. Whatever you agreed to with Biden, that's what we're doing. Okay, well then, the same rules apply all the way through? No. Kamala Harris wants notes on the dais. She wants notes in front of her so she can rely on a cheat sheet. You know, like some kids would hide a cheat sheet in their desk underneath so that or I remember when I was in school, some kids would scribble on the back of their ruler. You know, they'd turn the ruler over and all their notes would be written under there. There were all sorts of ways you could try and cheat on a test. These days, the kids just use AI, I think, to write their papers for them. Things have become technologically a lot easier to cheat. But the old days, people used to write on the back of their rulers. It helped if you had a plastic ruler and a dry erase marker. That was a good way to do it. And anyway, we've got Kamala Harris wants a cheat sheet. She wants a cheat sheet on stage with her. She wants to be seated for the debate. And she now wants it so that the microphones are not muted at all. Remember, that was a Democrat demand that the microphones be muted. Biden's team demanded that the microphones be muted so that Trump couldn't interject. That was the thinking. As long as Trump can't interject, we're good. Then Biden can monologue and meander his way through sentences. He can succeed. Trump won't stop him, won't interrupt his train of thought. Of course, you saw what happened. Biden self-immolated on that stage. went up in smoke. And Trump was silenced, and so was Biden. Remember that sequence where Biden said, we beat Medicare. Thank you, Mr. President. Then they move right to Trump, and Trump goes, yeah, he beat it to death. Well, it was at that moment. The microphones are cut off. Biden can't recover. He can't try and clean it up. He can't interject to say, no, I meant to say. Nothing like that. He's silenced from being able to speak anymore by virtue of the rule that he invented. And so Trump comes out of it looking great, out of that debate. And Kamala's campaign is now demanding, no, we don't want the mics to be muted. We can't let the mics be muted. And the reason, of course, for this is because they know that she's not going to win on policy grounds. There's no way in the world Kamala Harris is going to win a policy debate with Donald Trump. There are very simple comparisons that voters can do. They can say, well, what was my life like when Trump was president? What's my life like now with Biden and Harris in charge? That's an easy comparison. And so President Trump's going to be able to crank out home runs on that issue every moment of the debate. But if Kamala Harris can make it seem like she's a girl boss, if she can attack Trump and try and patronize him on stage while he's trying to answer questions, matronize him on stage while he's trying to answer questions, well, then that's a guarantee to some headlines, isn't it? The corporate media will cover that like crazy. Girl boss Kamala Harris tells Trump where to stick it. Bah, 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 bah. That's what we're going to get. We're going to get this mindless coverage, like the kind of stuff that you would see on the cover of Teen Vogue. Look at her being a woman in charge. Bah, 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 bah. And it's like, what? Are you serious? You can't be serious. And they think this is the single best moment that Kamala Harris ever had in any debate she's ever done is when she was debating Mike Pence in 2020.
Well, let's get but Susan, this is important. Susan, I want to add, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking, she says. And, of course, that launched 1,000 headlines. Kamala Harris dunks on Mike Pence, puts him in his place. I'm speaking. And it's just so embarrassing. Like the kid gloves handling of Kamala Harris, which, of course, we see continuing to this day. Just ridiculous. So that's what they think they can do. So if we turn the microphones on, if Kamala Harris can do an I'm speaking to Donald Trump, she'll win the debate. She doesn't need a single policy pronouncement. She doesn't have to account for any of her flip-flopping. All she has to do is give a single, I'm speaking, and boom, debate's over. She wins. Girl power. It's like, what? And this is how they think. This is really how they think. Meanwhile, she's not doing any debates. Any interviews, and maybe no debates. Any interviews. Refusing. She claimed earlier this month, I'm going to do one by the end of the month. Well, the clock is ticking, sweetheart. We've only got a couple days left, and you haven't done it yet. We have no idea what network you're possibly going to do it on. But all the Democrats who are aware of this woman do not want her doing an interview. They don't at all. Let's see. NBC Democrat pollster Cornell Belcher this week saying Kamala Harris should definitely not do an interview.
Can I say I love you and I love you? But as a campaign hack, no. She should be talking to the voters and barnstorming the way they do. Again, I said when I love you all, but I don't want her talking to you all right now. She should be talking directly to the voters and going across the country and doing that. Well,
there is risk in talking to us. There's no doubt about that, Amy. And yet, and
the irony, of course, is they're not going to ask her anything all that challenging. She'd be like, I'm so sorry. Lots of throat clearing. I'm sorry, but I have to ask. Previously, you supported ending fracking, and now it appears that you kind of support keeping it. Your Republican opponents have made a huge deal out of this. They've really tried to attack you on this. Can you just kind of walk us through, you know what I mean? Really, really slow roll. Give her time to process the question to see if she can't remember her cheat sheet, her talking points. Maybe even look at her cheat sheet as she's being asked these questions. Maybe tell her in advance that you're asking these questions. I'm so sorry I have to ask this. But that's not the problem. The real problem is her brain and her mouth and her lack of consistency and her phoniness. That's the problem. It's not the reporters who pose a problem. It's herself.
In talking to us, there's no doubt about that, Amy. And yet, there, you know, she had this soaring speech at the Democratic National Convention. She did talk, as Anna said, about policy. But again, there's still a lot of questions when it comes to, will she continue to build on the Biden agenda, or will she lead differently if she's elected?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about that. She's trying to run away from the Biden agenda, and it's funny because the Biden world people are all like, "Oh no, she was there for all the big decisions. She was there for everything." So if we're going down in history, you're going down with us. Then there was this fella from Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino. He's also speaking out about whether or not Kamala Harris should do interviews. He was on Bill Maher's podcast, you know, the HBO host, Bill Maher. Quentin Tarantino, who's responsible for a bunch of movies, looking at his movies. Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards, Kill Bill, Django Unchained, Reservoir Dogs. He's Hollywood royalty. Here he is saying that Kamala Harris should definitely not do an interview because I want to win. And you should listen to the way he talks about the presidency. It's our presidency, he says.
It's irrefutably right in a normal election cycle where you have a year to set your case. I think there's just all about winning the fucking election, all right? And then the easiest path to winning the election, look, you can talk about maybe she should have had more guts about this or that and the other, but we're the fucking president.
Right.
And Trump's not the president, and we're the fucking...
We're the president. Do you hear how the way he's talking about this? Did you have you ever, if you were a Trump voter, did you ever once say, we're the president? First of all, the English is awful. It's awful. But we're the president. What? It's the hive mind. It's the left. It's the way they think about these things.
President, and now it's going to be about this. But this is about f***ing winning. What most people don't give the Democrats enough credit for, all right, but we give the Republicans credit for. It's like, no, sometimes it's just about f***ing winning. And it doesn't matter how we look at this moment.
What is this? What opposite world is he living in? How many Republicans do you know who are down on the party for not actually fighting to win enough?
About f***ing winning.
Right.
This is about f***ing winning.
Yep. No, it is.
The guy has a very extensive vocabulary, as you can tell.
It's a mad f***ing dash, and she is running, and she's not stopping to stumble.
And you know what?
And there's nothing wrong with stopping this. I'm going to vote for her f***ing anyway, no matter what she says in a stupid f***ing interview.
Exactly.
So don't shut up.
Okay, so he's all over the place because, speaking of emotional incontinence, he's trying to process how to navigate through this conversation. Oh, well, should she do interviews? Bill Maher was saying, yeah, she should do interviews. This is like a normal thing that we expect out of politicians who are running for office. They should do interviews. And Quentin Tarantino is saying, no, she shouldn't, because this is about bleeping winning, and I don't want her to bleeping stumble. And even if she does a bleeping interview, I'm going to bleeping vote for her. He can't handle himself. He's going so crazy even thinking about it. So his position, just like a lot of these Democrats, is I know she's awful. I know she can't do this. I'm scared to death. Should she attempt to? So she'd better not run the basement campaign. So Quentin Tarantino is saying that. You got Democrat pollsters, MSNBC guests. Please, 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 Kamala Harris, do not do an interview. Please, for the love of God. Or whatever they worship. For the love of that thing. Don't do an interview. Don't do an interview. Meanwhile, over in Opposite World's favorite morning broadcast, Morning Joe, this audio is so ridiculous, you just have to hear it to believe it. I'm going to play it for you in just a moment as we talk about how Trump, according to Morning Joe, Trump is scared to debate Kamala Harris. He is shaking in. Well, in case you're wondering, Morning Joe is still a crazy place. Here they are this morning with David Ignatius, the newspaper columnist, and they're just all sitting around talking about how Trump is scared of Kamala Harris.
So, David, let's get your take to start with this suggestion from the former president that, well, maybe I won't do that debate after all. There's been a lot of chatter in Trump world that he is not eager to square off with the vice president. We know that he sometimes has trouble with taking questions from women, from powerful women. We've seen that throughout his political career.
Girl power.
But she's not just a powerful woman. She's a prosecutor. And the idea of a prosecutor...
Oh, I could feel the Z-snap in the air.
...versus a convicted felon seems to be one that he's not particularly excited about.
So I think what we've seen in the days before the convention,
David Ignatius,
and certainly after, is that Trump just doesn't know how to deal with Kamala Harris. He doesn't know how to pigeonhole her. His usual language of belittlement, derision isn't working.
He's so confused. He has no idea how to handle her. She's just so capable.
There is in the country this sense, I think, of we've been relieved from an election that people were dreading. Between two candidates who'd run before, an acrimonious, nasty convention, a sense of the country locked with these two older.
What is he talking about? Acrimonious, nasty convention, says the newspaper columnist who apparently either did not watch the Republican convention, one full of hope. I mean, Trump himself didn't even mention Biden, but twice during his own address. What? It was full of division and cynicism. No, it was full of hope and a promise of a better future
for Americans. And then suddenly there was a convention that really was a joyous event and that said, we've turned a page.
What?
And Trump can't figure out how to turn his own page.
It's a facade. It's like the entrance to Disney World. There's no buildings behind the walls.
I think as he plans for the debate, he has to appreciate that she is charismatic and charming on television in a way that he fancies he is. That the camera loves Kamala Harris. She's
well,
learned
debate.
The cadence of her speeches.
Let her do an interview then.
The way she presents herself to be a formidable TV presence.
Oh, yes.
Donald Trump knows
Formidable.
TV. He's smart enough to know he's got a problem here. He hasn't figured it out.
So, in case you're ever wondering, you're like, why are my lefty neighbors so delusional about the state of affairs? What is leading them in the wrong direction? Well, I don't know. Their morning show. That's Joe Biden's favorite show, by the way. It's all just designed for him, apparently. Coming up, we're going to talk to Jonathan Fahey, former ICE director. Get his thoughts on Kamala Harris's latest lies, that she's the one who's tough on the border as she shares clips of Donald Trump's border wall. Good afternoon to you. It is 4:35 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, top of the hour, retired Navy captain, combat veteran, Republican nominee for Senate, Hung Cao, will be with us. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. So Kamala Harris avoiding interviews, but Senator J.D. Vance, who is President Trump's running mate, is doing a bunch of them, just like President Trump. And here he is with Kristen Welker, J.D. Vance that is, talking about the illegal immigration crisis in the United States this weekend.
Whatever the number is, that number for the record, they say it's closer to 8 to 10 million.
But I think there are reasons to think that DHS is underestimating. Whatever the real number is, it's way too high, right? It's millions upon millions of illegal immigrants that have come in just since Kamala Harris became the border czar a few years ago.
She was put in charge of the root causes of migration.
Well, the root causes of migration, I would say, Kristen, is that Kamala Harris refuses to do her job as border czar.
I don't even understand what what that response is from these people. It's like, she wasn't in charge of fixing the border. She was just in charge of stopping the problem at the border. What? What are you even talking about? J.D. Vance correctly points out, the root cause is the lady who sees herself in the mirror each morning. Kamala Harris is the root cause. Here for more on this subject, Jonathan Fahey is here. He's a former federal prosecutor and the former acting ICE director under President Trump. Sir, good to have you back with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is amazing that they're still relying on this line that, she wasn't the border czar. She was just in charge of stopping the root causes of the border crisis. What even is that?
It is absolutely, on one hand, this is so comical and so entertaining if it wasn't so serious. But this whole idea that she was just going to, I think, identify the root causes of illegal immigration, I guess maybe address those. But the fun irony of it all is what they say the root causes are things like, corruption, lack of ability to get debit cards, climate change, things like that is what they actually say the root causes are. So the irony of it all is, well, then we know these are not legitimate asylum seekers coming to our country, so they should never be let in to begin with, which is the thing that they never reconcile with at all, because they don't say the root cause is torture or persecution in other countries, which is the only reason you can get asylum. So she has identified them, but that should be even more of a reason for them not doing what they're doing. But the whole thing is so nonsensical, and that's not what she supposedly was doing anyway. And J.D. Vance is right. We've all said it before. The root cause of what's happened in the last 4 years is the change of administration and the Democratic parties, which are full-on open borders. Nothing else matters. That's their highest priority with respect to immigration, and they're willing to have people die. They're willing to put us at our national security at risk. All of that to achieve their objective of open borders and massive numbers of illegal immigrants in the country.
And they scrapped a number of Trump-era provisions and rules that were designed to stop all of this, including things like Remain in Mexico. They refused to assemble border wall that was already called for by the federal government. And they've given billions of dollars to these NGOs that are human trafficking foreign nationals into our country. I don't know how you could look at this and say anything but Kamala Harris is to blame.
Yeah, there is no way. And if you look about what did they say in 2020? They all basically said, all the candidates, meaning the Democratic candidates, that it should not be a crime to come here illegally. They demonize ICE officers. Secretary Mayorkas laid out his, at the very beginning, their policy that they would not deport people unless they were an aggravated felon plus other factors or a national security risk. So they already, right off the bat, took almost every illegal alien off the table for deportation. And they've also supported so many benefits for illegal aliens. I've never heard a question asked, which I'm just so surprised by, but when they get a Democrat on one of these shows, they need to ask them, is there any benefit that American citizens now receive that illegal aliens should not receive? And they can't answer the question. They would have to hem and haw because they want them to get in-state tuition, welfare, everything else we get. Plus, they get free phones, and in New York, you're getting gift cards and free rent. It's astonishing. They never put the American citizens even on par with the illegal aliens. It's truly remarkable. They're almost like one of the more powerful constituencies in Washington.
Well, they also refuse to identify the problem. They don't say illegal immigrants. They don't say illegal aliens, which is the legal phrasing for this. They say undocumented migrants, which is designed to throw you off the scent.
Yeah, non-citizens, newcomers. Yeah, it's designed to not only throw you off the scent, but also to basically say, we don't think it should really be illegal, so come on in. The message is always very clear that, it may be illegal, but we don't think so. So it's an open door and you will never get kicked out. But yeah, all the euphemisms. I mean, we talked about this before. It's like the side that talks all in euphemisms and platitudes, that's generally the side you shouldn't be believing in anything that you do in life.
Yeah,
and that's all they do.
Because the truth isn't compelling enough. They need to lie to you. So Kamala Harris has an advertisement out this past month in which a couple of people have identified, including Peter Hassan over at the Free Beacon. He put in the footwork on this. I love this. That the ad talks about how she's getting tough on the border, but it features a bunch of border wall that was assembled while Trump was president. Peter Hassan has looked closely and said, wait a second. I know exactly where that section of the border is. That's Trump wall. Take a listen to the ad that Kamala Harris put out.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So now she's tough on the border, Jonathan Fahey, and I love that they refer to California. It is a border state, but she's a border state prosecutor because she was in California. And they also say that she supported the toughest bill on the border it's ever been presented. What do you make of that?
Well, we know that's one, it's not true. They're talking about that Senate bill that, the White House supposedly supported that really wasn't particularly tough at all. It just gave them cover on this issue. So they wanted to be able to say, look, we did something about the issue to take it off the table for 2024. But as you know, you've covered, lots of times, this bill allowed, I think it was up to 5,000 crossings per day before they even do anything about it. So that's 1.8 million get to come through our ports of entry without question. And this doesn't even include all what we know are the known gotaways that come through non-ports of entry. So that would continue. And then they have easier, it's easier to get asylum. The other thing that was a great thing about this bill, when you look at this, they gave money to sanctuary cities. The cities that encourage illegal aliens, they were going to give them money. But again, the whole thing with this bill, it totally gives up the game because, when you go back to this asylum nonsense that they talk about, if these people were really fleeing persecution and torture, would it be humane to send back the 5,001 person to be tortured and persecuted?
Yeah.
Of course not. But we know, it's just such nonsense. We know none of these, or virtually none of these people are asylum seekers. So it's 5,000 people a day, and it's all discretionary. And we know they don't enforce the current law. So why on earth would they enforce this law? And if somehow she gets elected, which, she may very well, if she could continue to hide and, have the media run her campaign for her, that they're not going to enforce any laws because this will be essentially, they've green-lighted, they will look like this open borders policy has been green-lighted by the voters. So we are full-on, basically no border whatsoever if she's elected president. And, that's what's going to happen. And the border bill is nonsense. They wouldn't consider H.R. 2, the House bill, which is actually strong. But again, the other thing that bothers me so much about this border bill is it's, again, a false premise. The false premise was we have this overly complicated problem with this immigration system that everyone knows is broken, so we need this complex solution, when in fact that's not the case. The problem is we don't enforce the current law, and if we did so, reinstated, remain in Mexico, deported illegal alien criminals.
Totally.
Wow, we could turn this thing around so quickly. We don't need to spend a gazillion dollars. We could do it, but that's always the other trick in government: make something sound so complicated.
And it's typical left-wing abuse of the American voter, because this is a problem that they created, and then they say they have the answer to it. And actually, if you look at the legislation, if you go back and look at it, which I did today, I was like, what was actually in that thing? $60 billion for Ukraine. $60 billion for Ukraine was in this thing, and just $20 billion for the, quote, border, including $2.3 billion for the human trafficking NGOs to bring more people into the country. The idea that this was somehow a tough border bill is a scam, and anybody who says that, Trump was opposed to it because it was going to get control of the border before he became president, they're lying to you.
Yeah, it's absolutely nonsense. And, the fact that it even got as far as it got is ridiculous. But it was all, again, part of, like you said, part of the Ukraine package. But, they don't need some major bill. It's like, let's enforce the law and send people away that don't belong here, and it will take care of itself. But they won't do this. It's like, but that's a Washington move, right? Hey, as long as we pass a bill that solves a problem, as opposed to solving the problem, and which they have no intention of doing. And they still support sanctuary cities, for crying out loud. Cities that keep criminals within the community and shield them from being deported. It's truly one of the most astonishing policies I've ever heard of.
And we have that now in our own area. So Fairfax County, Virginia, the source of yet another one of these stories today. ABC 7's Nick Minnock, who's so good at all of this, reporting today that Immigration and Customs Enforcement has arrested a Bolivian man who has been convicted of child sex crimes. And ICE is saying that Fairfax has been refusing detainers. Here's how they report the story today. ICE arrested a Bolivian national convicted of sex crimes against a Virginia child, and the Fairfax County Sheriff refused to honor three immigration detainers and release the convicted sex offender back into the community, says ABC 7. Enforcement and removal operations in Washington, D.C. said they lodged an immigration detainer on May 3rd after 36-year-old Jose Fabricio Vezaga Vargas, his arrest by the Fairfax County Police Department. ERO adds that in July, a Fairfax County judge sentenced him to 6 months in jail for the sexual assault of a child, and then the court suspended all 6 months of the sentence, and the Fairfax County Sheriff refused to honor an immigration detainer. Oh, so you can sexually assault a child and then be sentenced to a fake jail sentence. Then you get out right away, and the sheriff refuses to hand you over to ICE. What is going on in Fairfax County, Jonathan Fahey?
Yeah, it is. It's hard to believe that this is going on right, where I live and maybe where you live. It's like in this area that why would our local authorities strive to keep a child sex offender within our community? It's truly astonishing. And that's really a mainstream Democratic position that they support. I've never heard this administration, they're in charge of ICE. Why aren't they speaking out? The president should be on TV saying, ICE should honor these detainers. Why aren't they? Because they basically implicitly support the sanctuary cities movement. They could easily bring attention to this. And it's so bad. It's like, a child sex offense doesn't get you kicked out of the United States. It's truly astonishing. And the other thing that's really bad about it, I don't know the facts of the case, so I don't want to presume too much, but he got all suspended time. My guess is his attorney got in front of a judge and said, look, we don't need to use all the resources of our penal system because he's going to be deported anyway. I'm sure they made that type of argument because I've seen it made in court before.
Really?
And it's just kind of, so it's kind of funny. You sort of work both sides. You get the judge to say, well, he's getting kicked out, and then they don't kick him out. But Fairfax County, I mean, you've seen it, they have some policy, the schools will no longer cooperate with ICE. And we all know that is just a way to unfairly malign ICE to suggest that they used to run up in schools and deport the kids. And we all know that's not true, but they're always trying to attack, they'll attack ICE till the cows come home. And you heard, Kamala Harris, she's never apologized for calling those Border Patrol agents, accusing them of racially motivated whipping migrants. They never apologize for that, but they will take every shot at Border Patrol, every shot at ICE. But you cannot even use the correct term, illegal alien. And I'm surprised that you even said Bolivian man, because usually when an illegal alien commits a crime in this country, the media reports it as Houston man or Herndon man or something like that. They never even use the country. It's all this effort to deceive the American public about illegal alien crime. And then you'll also hear these things. There's really no crime, not much crime, but it's like, well, how do you know? You can never find out.
Well, so it's 100% is the crime rate if you illegally immigrate into the United States. And Nick Minnock of ABC7 deserves credit for telling the truth.
Oh, he's crushing it on these issues.
Has just been too rare these days among the people who call themselves journalists. And as he points out, this Bolivian national, not only was he busted and convicted for sexually assaulting a child, he was also charged with DWI on August 8th. Once again, Fairfax County refusing to honor an immigration detainer. He was arrested again on August 15th. He was charged with 7 counts of felony possession of child porn and felony possession of obscene material with a minor. Once again, the Fairfax County Sheriff, Stacey Kincaid, refusing to honor the detainer. And lastly, insofar as she can chalk up an excuse, which she's attempting to do, she's saying, well, the former Virginia Attorney General, Mark Herring, the Democrat is no longer the Attorney General anymore, told us that, well, we don't really have to respond to ICE detainers. We can ignore them. What? Does that pass the smell test for you, Jonathan Fahey?
No, not really, because a lot of left-wing jurisdictions have sort of made that argument, well, it should only have to be a judicial warrant or anything else, but there's no law that requires that. And, under the, INA law, that it gives the, secretary the discretion to, promulgate regulations to enforce the law. And one of the regulations they had is this detainer system. So there's no reason they can't comply. It's that they don't want to comply, and that's their excuse to not comply. Was Mark Herring, was a far left AG, as you know. But if they were asked Attorney General Mayorkas, is what to give an advisory opinion, I'm sure he would say you can enforce these. So this idea that they're trying to hide behind some opinion of a left-wing, political Attorney General, it doesn't hold water, and that's never held. But you only see that in certain places because lots of places enforce immigration detainers, and they're not getting sued or enjoined or anything else. So, or they're not losing it, at least to my knowledge, and I'm sure I would have heard about it if they are. So it's just a fake excuse. The truth is they want in Fairfax County and the Democratic Party as a whole, they want to do everything they can to encourage illegal immigration, which even is saying, hey, you could come here and do the worst possible crime and we won't kick you out. And think about this, Vince. If you were to go to Europe or something for a vacation and got convicted of drinking and driving, they'd throw you out and send you back, and you wouldn't complain about it, that it was somehow unfair. This idea that you get to come here illegally and commit crimes and still have sort of, act like you have a right to stay. And President Biden, if you remember, when he ran for president, he said that the only people that should be kicked out that are already, like you said, here illegally are people that are felons and not people that drink and drive. And, tell that to somebody that's been, had a child or a family member killed by a drunk driver, that, they get to stay in this country even when they're already illegal and commit new crimes. It's truly absurd. And I'm sure most of the American people, 80 to 90% of it, are aghast by these sanctuary cities laws. But the far left runs Fairfax County right now and really runs the Democratic Party. And they are, give them credit. They are open borders. They were fighting, they're fighting tooth and nail to keep this. And this idea that Kamala Harris will somehow push back on this when she's president, there's no way to believe that that's remotely credible.
How despicable. Imagine running for office just so you could abuse your own citizens, which is what they're doing. Thank you very much. Jonathan Fahey, former ICE director. Good to talk to you today, sir.